Hi, so I want to talk about Rachel's body assessment. She's a unique case. Rachel has OCD, a history of OCD, and she also has high stress, high anxiety, and this is something she works with a therapist on and has worked with nutritionists in the past. So I'm going to prelude these next statements with the fact that I'm a registered dietetic nutritionist, registered in the state of Illinois and with the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics in the United States. And it is my opinion that, and her opinion as well, and initially brought up by Rachel, that doing a body assessment and focusing on anything that relates to numbers, particularly with her body composition, will lead to neuroses and unhealthy levels of stress and anxiety. And so tracking weight is not an option in this case. And so this is something that I find extremely interesting and just want to chat with you about too, James, is that from a dietitian's perspective, it is not always safe and healthy to use weight or any body composition metrics as a metric for growth and improvement, regardless of the type of training you're doing. And this is highly client dependent. I'm sure you're aware of this and also agree with this. So Rachel is one of those cases where it would be unsafe and unwise and not healthy for Rachel to pay attention to specifically numbers. So same thing goes with macros. We're not doing that. It's not going to be safe and healthy for her. She becomes neurotic about these things and obsesses over them. And so we will instead be using things like the hand size portion guide and plate sizes to determine her nutrition needs. And so that's what I will say about body, but generally looking at her and from what she said, she's put on some weight in the last few years. She has a history of being a competitive gymnastics athlete, and so was once a body composition and had a relationship with food that was unhealthy and highly restrictive, and she wants to avoid that. She wants a positive relationship with food. She wants food to be enjoyable, part of her culture, part of her family, part of her community. And I'm going to help her do that while making smart, healthy choices. She also has gastrointestinal distress. And so this is a perfect client for me because I'm a dietitian and I can work with her to try to alleviate some of those symptoms. So food journaling is going to be a huge component of this, and identifying foods that provide discomfort or provide comfort for her. So that's what I'll say about the body assessment, how it's going to help inform some of the decisions there. Also, she has a lot of trouble sleeping. So behaviorally, there are some things we're experimenting with that I explain more typed out in the final project, that she works with sleep doctors. She works with GI doctors. And to address some of these things, just getting sunlight and prescribing walks outside, prescribing breath work before bed, winding down an hour before bed without electronics. Those are some things that we're going to focus on behaviorally. Nutritionally, focusing on good quality foods, and again, journaling and all that. For movement, so her movement assessment, principles of gain, full body 3 times per week. She is essentially a beginner in resistance training and does Pilates twice a week and wants to maintain that. She has a reformer in her house and does this remotely. I'll also mention this is another remote client because she's really afraid of COVID right now. This is part of her OCD. Tends to take things to the extreme, and so that's why her assessment was provided remotely. Sustain, we're going to take her from map 10 maybe down to map 8, map 7. She doesn't particularly enjoy aerobic work, but this will help facilitate a solid base foundation for growth in resistance training over the course of a lifetime. And so I'll be prescribing walks outside, which she's comfortable with, and maybe some additional biking if she's open to that. But it seems like walking is going to be the low-hanging fruit for now. Her shoulders and a lot of her joints are hypermobile. So I noticed this in her movement assessment, and she also mentioned this, as well as her PT mentioned this. She has hypermobility in her shoulders, in her hips, and this is something from being a competitive gymnast. over the years that she just has hypermobility. And so we're going to do a lot of high time under tension movement to help create awareness in these different body positions and movement patterns and joints. We're going to be improving her overall absolute strength and also muscle endurance to try to help control this hypermobility, and also do plenty of core stability and strength exercises. So you notice that in the scratch test. Great position in her torso, but a little bit of hypermobility in those shoulders. She could kind of really grab onto her hands. It was pretty crazy. So good depth and control on the squat, able to keep her torso upright. I want it, again, high time under tension, just create awareness in that position, some banded movements perhaps, and different load variations that might challenge her in the squat position. Seems like she has good control there. Lunge, she performed this incorrectly on the assessment video, so I had her FaceTime me and set it up, and I walked her through how to do it right. This was not recorded though. I also had her wear different pants because it was very hard to see the position of her knees and the pants she was wearing. So we fixed that, but I did notice some instability in that position, and I think that just comes down to doing some glute and core exercises and incorporating RNT. It wasn't too bad or extreme, but definitely some instability and asymmetry there. High time under tension there as well. The toe touch and ASLR, some of that hypermobility was seen again. Just history of a gymnast, I suppose. High time under tension to create awareness in the hinge movement will help with this. And then her core was okay. I didn't see holds as long as I maybe expected with her history as an athlete, but I guess you should get rid of your expectations, especially when it's someone who hasn't been training for years in this context. And so I know she does Pilates, and I think that maybe created some expectation in core strength, but nevertheless, we're just going to work on some isometrics. I think we can start pretty advanced with these relatively, going max holds minus a few seconds and see how she does in those, and play around with some of that, as well as doing some hip exercises to improve core strength and core stability. Her work assessment doesn't love sustainable exercise, and so she felt that this was challenging work, was not used to being on an air bike, didn't feel comfortable there. That's why I'm going to start with some walking. We're just going to start with base foundation, great base foundation in aerobic movement, and really get her used to that with longer walks, starting with a half hour and trying to build up from that. It's nothing she can't handle, she just doesn't love it. So that's where we're gonna go with that, to try to make this program enjoyable for her and something that helps support her mental health and well-being. That is the key goal here, is support health and well-being, particular psychological well-being. It's a complex human being with a lot of varying needs, and some of that's rooted in food, and some of that's rooted in a connection with her body as a gymnast, and someone who's now in their later years and wants to get back into a deliberate training program. She likes this and cares about it, so I really want to deliver for her, and that's the plan going forward based on what I noticed and interpreted in her body move work assessment.